A very good morning and welcome to this event on water for peace and security from risk to resilience. Water scarcity is becoming an alarming global issue. It is predicted that by 2025, 2/3 of the world's population will be in water-stressed countries. The increasing competition for these precious resources can lead to potential grievances, conflict, and even outbreaks of violence, some of which we're already witnessing around the world. Building resilience and designing successful adaptation strategies to the rapidly deteriorating water scarcity situation at national, provincial, local, and sometimes transboundary levels is leading into fragility and causing countries to push for better mitigation in water-related challenges. At the same time, water cooperation brings benefits beyond simply water access, such as peace, sustainable development, and regional integration, making adaptation even more efficient and effective, but even more urgent. Your Excellency, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tandi Mwape. I serve as Regional Humanitarian Diplomacy Coordinator at the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies for the Africa region. It is my utmost honor and privilege to be your Master of Ceremonies today. This COP presidency event on water for peace, security, from risk to resilience highlights ways of turning water risk into resilience domestically by ensuring that good water governance involving inclusive and informed processes as well as transboundary collaboration. Let me at this juncture welcome to the stage Mr. Dimitri Mariahissen, the Deputy Executive Director for the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, for the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. I'm very pleased to represent the UN Economic Commission for Europe this morning and to speak at this event. And I'd like to start by thanking the COP28 presidency along with IFRC, UNCCD, and WSP for co-organizing this event. Water is a precondition for life, and we know that it's becoming a resource that is amongst the scarcest there is. First, I'd like to speak about risks associated with water. If current trends continue, we all know that, but people do not acknowledge it openly. If current trends continue, water scarcity, with its cross-sectoral implications on politics and economy, has the potential to create a new wave of national, regional, and global challenges of unprecedented scale, and put significant pressure on international security. Let me give you some numbers to illustrate this. There are currently 153 states sharing water basins. Almost every country that is not an island shares some waters with its neighbors. These international basins cover 46% of the Earth's land surface, host about 40% of the world's population, and account for approximately 60% of global river flow. Unfortunately, too many of these basins are still not covered by viable international or regional agreements that can help countries govern these shared water resources. And just a few weeks ago, the update of the water events database by the Pacific Institute, as just one example, showed that conflicts related to water are unfortunately increasing. In addition, water can be weaponized, and we're seeing examples of this around the region and around the world. We're really in troubled waters. Well, we are in troubled waters, in fact, for international peace, and we are in troubled times for international water cooperation. My second message is about cooperation, though. Despite these risks, water can also represent a trigger to promote cooperative practices and build collaborative institutions. Shared waters have in some instances been islands of cooperation in otherwise extremely conflictive relationships. Often it's only the water people that are still talking when politicians can no longer interact. The first international water treaty dates back as far as 2,500 years BC, when two Sumerian city-states of Lagash and Umma crafted an agreement ending a water dispute along the Tigris River. In more recent times, cooperation on the Mekong, a very famous example, persisted through the Indo-Chinese Wars, and the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty has survived 3 wars between India and Pakistan. These are examples that can and should inspire us and should really be a model for cooperation for many other countries around the world. Often in post-conflict situations, water cooperation plays a pivotal role in rebuilding trust and fostering long-term stability. One example from the region that I represent is the Sava Agreement, which was the first international treaty to be signed generally after the Balkans War. Later today, we will hear how the Lake Chad Basin Commission helps reduce security risks in that part of the world. These examples show the importance of flexibility in transboundary agreements and importance of effective and strong basin organizations. They are not only agents of peace, but can also play a role in solving other fundamental challenges that countries around the world face. One such challenge is climate change. So now let me turn to the topic of this Conference of the Parties, climate. Transboundary water cooperation can play an important role in making climate change adaptation more effective. What specifically do we mean here? First, working together, countries in a shared basin can enlarge the planning space, can prioritize measures, can avoid maladaptation, and can share costs and benefits of climate change adaptation measures. The Transboundary Water Cooperation Coalition, which is an alliance of about 40 countries and organizations, has prepared a very specific policy brief ahead of this COP28, demonstrating specifically where transboundary cooperation has already been considered in the preparations for this COP, for example, in shaping the global goal on adaptation. Enhancing our efforts to reinforce transboundary water cooperation is critical, and unfortunately only 24 countries worldwide currently have all their transboundary cooperation basins covered by operational arrangements. Which brings me to my final point. What specifically do we as UNECE offer to the global community as a solution? It is the 1992 Water Convention, which in our view represents a critical tool that provides a transparent global legal regime for managing transboundary water cooperation. It provides common principles, for example, equitable and reasonable utilization of water resources. It works on prevention and mitigation of transboundary harm. It focuses on protection of ecosystems. And more generally, it is fundamentally about collaborative approaches to address water-related challenges, importantly contributing both to international peace and security and to achieving reduction of harmful effects of climate change. The Water Convention is a unique intergovernmental platform. It's 31 years old at this point in time, and a critical development is that it's become global. Since 2016, it's open to global accessions. 11 countries from outside of UNECE region have so far joined it, 5 just last year, and we have 20 more countries from around the world about to join the convention, are either in the process of negotiating or ratification. For more than 15 years, under the leadership of the Netherlands and Switzerland, the Water Convention has helped countries to work together to solve transboundary cooperation issues, to adapt to climate change, to exchange of experiences, for example, on such issues as financing for water cooperation, and has helped develop very specific solutions for specific basins. Let me just give you an example of developing transboundary adaptation strategies in Dniester, Neman, and Chutalas basins. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again reiterate my key points. Water is a critical resource. We need to account for risk of increased water scarcity in whatever scenario policymakers are making today. If you don't account for water scarcity, your scenario will be off. We need to consciously reap the peace dividend that water cooperation can provide. We need to use in this a globally accepted set of norms, Water Convention, 1992 Water Convention, as well as the 1997 Water Courses Convention, provide a very important tool in this regard. And of course, as water contributes to peace, water cooperation needs to be part of a solution for climate change adaptation. From UNECE, let me reiterate that we, having made this pledge already as part of the Water Action Agenda, we commit by 2030 to support at least 7 new or updated agreements on transboundary water cooperation, and at least 5 regional processes in transboundary water cooperation as our specific contribution to solving this global problem. With this, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for this partnership, for being here today, and wish this event all the success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dimitri Mariasin. I got that right this time. And thank you so much for the positive reinforcement on the messages you have delivered this morning, focusing on water as a positive contributor to climate adaptation, water as a peace dividend that it provides to countries across borders. It's fantastic to hear that the World Convention on Water is gaining momentum. Thank you for highlighting that. And that transboundary governance bodies are agents of peace. May I also highlight some of the challenges you've mentioned on risk associated with water that is creating bigger and new global challenges. You mentioned that 153 states share water basins and that only 24 have got transboundary cooperation agreements. So we do wish your leadership in this to push this agenda forward. And thank you also for highlighting that cooperation indeed is required and that there is more need for water people to talk a lot more with the politicians. And we're glad that amongst us, we have the water people and politicians to drive these conversations. Let me now turn to the next segment of our event today and welcome to the stage Ms. Nena Stojkovic, the Undersecretary General for Global Relations, Diplomacy and Digitalization at the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, who will lead us in this high-level dialogue on water, peace, and security. Over to you.
Very much, Tande, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to invite my esteemed panelists, honorable ministers, colleagues, to join me on the stage here. I would suggest maybe we start here with the minister from Lebanon, then the minister from Ukraine, and then Stephen, please, and then minister from the Chad Basin, and Irina, please, whichever way you want. Thank you very much. Minister, please, you can go here, or here, yeah. Maybe some gender balance on this panel in terms of seating arrangements. It's a great pleasure to moderate this panel, and our panel is called Sharing Water for Peace and Resilience. As Tande mentioned, I represent International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent National Societies, and it's a great pleasure to moderate the panel. I will make a few opening remarks, then I will introduce my esteemed panelists, and then we'll ask each of them one question only, and we should be able to go through this discussion in about 30 minutes. I want to thank you all for being with us here on the Water Day at COP28. I would like to thank first Mr. Dimitri Mariasin for announcing the Transboundary Water Cooperation Coalition and the Water Convention. I know that you're going to hear this several times, but I also have to reiterate that water insecurity is emerging as a fundamental threat to human health, peace, and security. Like Dimitri just did before me, I would like to thank COP28 presidency for bringing us together today to showcase how cooperative, equitable, and sustainable water management practices enable peace and security in fragile and conflict-affected settings. Water insecurity and the decline and destruction of water and sanitation systems are causing social, economic, and political instability. This threatens peace, survival, health, and development of communities at all levels. Water insecurity also leads to competition over resources, which brings grievances, conflicts, and even outbreaks of violence. Building resilience and designing successful adaptation strategies to the rapidly deteriorating water scarcity at the national and local levels in fragile countries is essential for reducing water-related challenges. At the same time, water cooperation brings benefits beyond water access, such as peace, sustainable development, and regional integration, making adaptation more effective and efficient. IFRC, UNECE, UNCCD, and the Hague Center for Strategic Studies came together today to raise the issue at the highest level and showcase innovative solutions and strategies for addressing water scarcity and local, national, and transboundary water management. The event seeks to initiate a meaningful dialogue with nations that currently lack water cooperation agreements, ushering in the inception of the Transboundary Water Cooperation Coalition. By doing so, we are here today to promote sustainable water management practices and foster international cooperation, aiming to reduce potential conflicts arising from water scarcity. And the last thing that I wanted to say in this opening is that within IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent National Societies, our national societies work to ensure emergency, semi-permanent, and long-term water supplies in fragile contexts, reducing the possibility of grievances and violence. Every year, efforts to improve water sanitation and hygiene access result in over 100 million people in fragile settings receiving essential services. Our national societies, as you know, are auxiliary to their governments, and they can also play an important role in facilitating water cooperation dialogues. So I hope that this brief introductory remarks set the stage for our discussion with the panel, and it is my great pleasure now to introduce our 5 esteemed panelists. I will start first from Mr. Walid Fayed on the further left-hand side, Minister of Water of Lebanon. Thank you very much for being with us. Then I would like to introduce Ukrainian Minister, Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources, sitting on the right-hand side from me, Mr. Yevgeny Fedorenko. Welcome, Deputy Minister. Then on my left-hand side is His Excellency Stephen Collett, Vice Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation of the Government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, who is also COP28 water champion. Stephen, thank you very much for being with us. Then I would like to introduce His Excellency Mr. Ambassador Nuhu, Executive Secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for being with us. And last but not the least, and we'll follow this order in the remarks, I would like to introduce Ms. Irina Patrahau, Strategic Analyst from the Hague Center for Strategic Studies. Now that we have set the stage and introduced the panelists, I would like to ask my first question to the Minister of Lebanon, Dr. Walid, Minister Fayed. How can water cooperation provide geopolitical stability in the Middle East and North Africa region?
I had the pleasure to be invited here by IFRC, with whom we have a very strong working relationship. So I wanted to thank you for your support to Lebanon. And also your support to my ministry, the Ministry of Energy and Water. We have a lot of projects that are running in Lebanon that are quite productive at the economic, but more importantly at the social level, and we'd welcome even more work with you in this regard. It's with the weight of the refugees situation in Lebanon, which are amounting to about 2 million people out of a that add to 4 million citizens in Lebanon. It creates a large source of pressure, and the support is quite welcome. And it's a multi-sectoral support that we get from the IFRC. So thank you for it. The water as a trigger for conflict, water as a trigger for peace. The equations are interlinked in the sense that it's a chicken and egg. Can we say that it is war that produces the problems about water, or is it the water that produces war? Sometimes it's not clear. In Lebanon's experience, and I want to maybe focus my speech on the Lebanon case, because inside Lebanon we have a diverse societal network that shares resources. So there's a part of my speech on that front. And there is also a relationship that is more or less a friendly relationship that we have with a neighboring country, which is Syria, even though at times there were some tensions, but in general it's a friendly country, absolutely aligned geographically, politically, and historically. Separately from that, and on the other side, we have a war situation with an enemy state, with whatever that has in terms of ramifications on the water sector. So I will bring about some experience on these three fronts inside my speech, if you don't mind. First, water is a fundamental resource. It flows through the veins of our planet. It sustains life and connects us all. By sharing water resources, we transcend borders and build bridges of cooperation. This act not only addresses immediate needs, but also lays the foundation for peaceful coexistence and prosperity, future prosperity among nations. When communities share water, they contribute to the resilience both of their ecosystems, but also of their societies. It becomes a shared responsibility to protect and conserve this invaluable resource, ensuring its availability for the generations to come. Today, as I said, I'll try to emphasize the profound impact that sharing water can have on peace, but also in terms of times of war, and it has an added value on the resilience inside our communities. And I will do so, as I said, by looking at the three parts. One is within the Lebanese community, sharing water. One is sharing water with a friend state, and one is conflicts around water with an enemy state. Sharing water between the Lebanese communities. In Lebanon is a land rich with history and with a diverse community base. It faces water scarcity today, which are exacerbated also by political and environmental factors. In Lebanon, we have an increasing demographic pressure. As I said, we have a natural growth rate of about 3%, but we also have an added weight from a large inflow of refugees, Syrian refugees, to the tune of 2 million, or a third of today's population, in addition to the legacy problem of the Palestinian refugees. So that, coupled with the impacts of climate change, which results in the reduction of pluviosity, or of the natural rainwater coming every year, it results in a situation of water scarcity, in the sense that not so long ago, in Lebanon, we used to have about 2,000 cubic meters of water per year per capita, and today we only have, if we count the refugees, maybe 600 meters cube per year, which is below the scarcity level. And hence, action is needed to have a more efficient system to use water and reuse it also. In Lebanon, sharing water goes beyond a mere necessity. It's shared journey towards stability and harmony. Equitable distribution of water resources among different regions and communities becomes a catalyst for peaceful coexistence. By transcending political divides and fostering collaboration, Lebanon harnesses the power of shared water to build bridges towards a more resilient future. we have adopted the newest national water strategy, where we opted for sustainable water management practices, equitable distribution, investments also in strategic and centralized water projects like dams to harness the surface water while looking after the environmental aspects, and that allow to share the benefits across several regions. We are also working intensely to valorize water as a precious resource by establishing a balanced tariff, encouraging people from all communities, classes, and regions to pay their dues, because that's also part of the challenges, the commercial side, and by tackling illegal access to water and making it equitable access for everybody and fair. The Lebanese people are also sharing this resource with the Syrian displaced neighbors and Palestinian refugees neighbors, and it's becoming a heavy burden on their shoulders and sometimes a source of social friction. Finding a quick solution for both conflicts must include definitely safe return of the displaced and the refugees to their homelands. Around sharing water with Syria, the case of Lebanon and Syria illustrates the profound impact that sharing water can have on fostering peace and resilience between neighboring nations. The Orontes and the Kabir, Nahr al-Kabir, al-Janubi rivers are shared water courses, and they become a symbol of the interconnected destinies of the two countries. By collaboratively managing the waters of the Orontes River in the frameworks of the treaty signed in 2002 between the two countries, Lebanon and Syria have embarked on a journey towards mutual understanding, stability, and shared resilience. This treaty allowed Lebanon to launch the project to build 2 dams on the Orontes River, but the first irrigation dam under construction was bombarded and destroyed by Israel during its war on Lebanon in 2006. And although it is 200 kilometers away from the southern border, so it's really an act of a criminal act, an unjust act. Mutual studies are also underway for the construction of a joint stocking dam on the Al-Kabir Janubi River, which represents the northern border between Lebanon and Syria. The responsible sharing of water resources will lay the groundwork for sustainable development benefiting the communities on both sides of the border. By implementing joint water management practices, Lebanon and Syria have not only addressed immediate water-related challenges, but also built trust and fostered a spirit of collaboration that extends beyond the realm of natural resources. Now, talking about water in zones of conflicts, in the case of Lebanon, it can also become a source of conflict and wars also, instead of being a source of cooperation and peace between countries. At any moment, Israel didn't hide its ambitions to extend its so-called border to the Litani River. And obviously, behind that are desires to make use of the water resource that's proper to Lebanon. Throughout the years, the Israeli prevented by force the implementation of several projects on the Jordan River basin, including the Lebanese projects on the Wazani and Hasbani rivers, and all attempts to start the construction of Ibn Sa'i Dam. The site work on the Hasbani River was bombarded by the Israeli army in 1965 and 1966. Let me say that water scarcity knows no border is a slogan, is a principle that is largely misinterpreted and misused by the Israeli government for decades to justify its military acts and to include unfair articles in the peace treaties that it signed with some neighboring countries. We have to see a demonstration to the world that shared resources can be a catalyst for peace rather than conflict by respecting international laws and conventions governing the transboundary water distribution. In this context, it's my pleasure to say that we're doing every effort to join the Water Convention of 1992, much like we did with the water conventions, waterways convention, watercourse conventions of 1997. In conclusion, the journey towards peace and resilience in Lebanon, but also in the Middle East and North Africa region, is linked to the responsible sharing of water resources, firstly, between the people of the country themselves, but also with their neighbors. I cannot but stand with the governments of Egypt and the governments of Iraq in their lawful and request for a just and fair and equitable sharing of the water resources when it comes to the relations with Ethiopia regarding the dam of Nahda, but also when it comes to the relation between Iraq and Turkey, with Turkey using much of the water that has now created big problems for Iraq and the water scarcity in Iraq, which is traditionally, historically known for its waters of the Dejla and Furat rivers. They are now suddenly facing the need to build desalination facilities. It's very ironic, but it is the result of a certain balance of powers that is allowing neighboring countries to do more than fair role with the waterways. And accordingly, I would call on everyone to adopt those international water conventions and to be faithful in implementing them. While addressing these challenges, let's not forget that water has the power to unite, heal, and bring about a brighter and more harmonious future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Fayed, for bringing the complexity of the MENA region to this podium and also showcasing some positive and not so positive examples of Lebanon and its neighbors. I would like now to turn to Your Excellency Fedorenko, and would like to ask us to tell us more about the situation of transboundary waters in Ukraine.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak at this event. I said some situation about transborder cooperation in Ukraine, in the water management. But at first, I need to say about the situation in Ukraine. Some words. Russia's war against Ukraine and climate change threaten global water security. Water cannot be weapon. It must be instrument of peace. Every day of war is an acceleration of negative changes for the planet's environmental. The role of water in armed conflicts is changing. Ukraine is experiencing constant attacks on the environmental and civilian infrastructure. The destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant dam is the largest terrorist attack since the Chernobyl accident. More than 700,000 people were left without access to water. The consequences for the economy and the environment will be left in the long term. International waters require international rules. There are 263 transboundary river basins in the world. About 2/3 of them are not jointly managed. Ukraine continues to strengthen transboundary cooperation to address water issues. On October 2023, Ukraine, Romania, and Moldova signed a declaration on cooperation and management of transborder Prut River Basin. Territorial cooperation is important for the integrated management of the Prut River Basin and balanced water use within the three countries, Ukraine, Moldova, and Romania. The transborder Prut Basin faces water quality problems, declining biodiversity, and deteriorating ecosystems. The effects of climate change, with increasingly frequent floods and droughts, are already being felt in the basin and pose a threat to all three countries. We agreed to work together to harmonizing river basin management plans in the three national parts of the Prut Basin, strengthening cooperation in water monitoring, flood risks, water scarcity, and biodiversity. The declaration is the basis for a new mechanism of cooperation. An expert group within the International Commission for the Protection of the Danube River, which we deal with the issues of achieving good ecological status for the water of the Prut River Basin. The signing of the declaration will ensure unity and effective trilateral cooperation in the Prut River Basin. Close interstate ties synchronize the management policies of transborder rivers basins. They enable joint assessment of their condition and strategic management. And the issue of security and peace plays a key role in realizing this. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, presented the special Ukrainian formula, one of the points of which is to combat ecocide. An international working group of Russia's environmental crimes, established under the office of the president, is working on its implementation, and work is underway and tools and mechanisms that will not only bring the aggressor to justice at the legislative level, but also implement measures to restore the environmental with the help of other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I would now like to turn to His Excellency Stephen Collette. And we appreciate, obviously, the Netherlands championship on water. And as a water champion country, we wanted to hear what is the role of the Netherlands in supporting global initiatives working on water security and cooperation.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking here today. We have heard very telling and impressive examples of where water can be a source of conflict, and at the same time we also underlined, and the previous speakers also underlined, that water is maybe even more often a source of cooperation. I think if you talk about water as a source of conflict, we also think about conflicts not between nations, but also conflicts between people, conflicts between herders and farmers. If you look about in drought, of scarcity of land, many issues related to water and to the changing climate. So the most fundamental solution, of course, is that we agree in COPs like this on emissions and reducing emissions, because that is finding our way towards that 1.5 degrees also is fundamental to the cause we are uniting here today. We are indeed labeled as a water champion, and that's not because we champion the water, but I think that because the water has been such a fundamental threat to our country throughout our existence, basically, and even beyond. As you know, the majority of our country is under the water level, the seawater level, and climate change will not make it better in that respect. So water champion, I think, is that we early on had to engage fundamentally, existentially, you could say, with water management, and have built up our country from there. And I think the governance of the Netherlands has been founded on the fact that we had to deal with water. And we have in every province a water board, which is a democratically elected board, actually, where we deal with scarcity and with floods, with issues of nature, and every generation will bring a new challenge. So the challenge of nature now, for instance, is very prominent in the water boards, where farmers of the Netherlands and other stakeholders actually unite and try to find solutions at the very local level. And the reason I'm saying this is that our governance at the democratic level, at the national level even, is founded by this century-old water board system. And for that, we learned that locally solution spaces, so locally adopted spaces for solving water issues and scarcity issues, are fundamental to the way we deal with our water issues, and actually we deal with many issues in our countries. And that's where we started also building up knowledge and expertise on water management, and that's also why we we try to be very humble, but we try to be a champion in terms of sharing our knowledge and expertise. We have our water envoys. You will talk later, Maaike. Thanks that you were here. And we indeed co-hosted the UN Water Conference in March. And we're very glad that the topic of water, which came out so strongly out of that conference with, I think, 800 commitments, many on the issue of peace and security, but also billions of pledges, that all these commitments coming out of that conference are actually fed into this COP, because the interlinkages between climate and water. And what we will do in closing is very much to continue to support transboundary water management challenges, support them from our legal capabilities, support them from our grassroots community building exercises in humanitarian assistance, in our assistance in fragile states, and we will try to continue to play our role also on the international stage to actually put on the agenda all the water issues as much as we can, including many of the great initiatives here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collette, for your leadership and for putting water so prominently on the agenda, including at this COP28. I would like now to go to the Ambassador Nuhu, Executive Secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. Lake Chad Basin Commission has been supporting member countries for decades in preventing conflicts and also promoting climate change adaptation in the basin. Ambassador Nuhu, can you please share with us your experience?
Let me first of all thank the organizers for the invitation extended to the Lake Chad Basin Commission to be heard this morning. It is an opportunity not to miss. I thank you for that. Now, since I have just 5 minutes, let me very quickly start by introducing the Lake Chad Basin, because I'm not sure everybody here knows about it. The hydrographic basin of Lake Chad covers an area of 2,434,000 square kilometers, which is about 8% the surface area of Africa. The conventional basin, which is the subject of the mandate of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, covers about 967,000 square kilometers. The Lake Chad Basin Commission itself, which I have the honor of leading, was established through the Fort Lamy Convention on 22nd May 1964 by its 4 founding fathers, the riparian states around the Lake Chad. That is Cameroon, Niger, Nigeria, and Chad. They were later joined by the Central African Republic in 1964 and Libya in 2008. We have 4 observer countries: Sudan, Egypt, and the Republic of Congo and Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the impact of climate change in the Lake Chad Basin is a well-known fact. What are these impacts that we are talking about? First of all, the rising temperatures lead to higher evapotranspiration and early drying of water bodies in the area. And the fluctuation of the start and end dates of the rainy season, leading to a shortening of agronomic season. That now created a problem of cropping season, and the ability to farm, the time for farming has been shortened, which is leading to food scarcity. Now, it also led to increased frequency of extreme events, droughts, and floods. There is also a southward shift of the mean position of the 100-day line, which is the growing period, with a significant loss of fertile land and pastures. That is, we have experienced a southward descent of nomadic pastoralists with early arrivals, sometimes before harvest, and late departure after planting. Now, that is at the root of the farmer-herder clashes that we're having in the area because of the desert encroachment and shift in the rainy period. Herders move down southwards while the plants are still there, and they are still there before they leave the area. So they eat up the crops, and that creates problems in our zone. There is a shrinking wetland coupled with the proliferation of invasive aquatic plants degradation of aquatic habitats and reduction in fish production and diversity of fish and fauna. We have pressure on wetlands with recourse to prohibited practices of construction of fish channels, chemical pesticides, and use of krills. Now, in the 1960s, Lake Chad was the world's 6th largest endorheic lake, covering a surface area of 26,000 square kilometers. However, it reduced to by 50% to 4,700 square kilometers following a drought from 1972 to 1975, and it went down again to a surface area of 1,410 square kilometers after another drought from 1982 to 1985, thus losing about 90% of its surface area. That, of course, created the problems that we are facing today. Now, while that was happening, there was demographic pressure in the area. In the 1960s, early 1960s, when the lake had 25,000 square kilometers of water, the population was about 7 million. Now, by the end of the 1980s, the population, through immigration and, of course, high birth rate, had reached 40 million people. So we have a situation of population explosion, chasing less pasture, less water, and less farmland. That, of course, created an army of disgruntled people in the basin, leading to the quick acceptance of Boko Haram ideology when it eventually reached the area. That is why we are having this problem of Boko Haram right now in the lake. The situation has been addressed in other parts of the basin, but the headquarters of Boko Haram itself is within the islands of Lake Chad, because with the drying of the lake, new islands surfaced up and they became inhabitants of Boko Haram. What is the Lake Chad Basin Commission doing regarding the situation, the adaptation to this current situation that we are having now? First of all, we have elaborated policy documents to guide the conception and execution of adaptation projects in the area. We also have jointly identified and designed transboundary adaptation projects in collaboration with partners. We have also designed and implemented several pilot projects to study the situation and exchange the knowledge with member countries. Then, of course, we embark on resource mobilization in order to be able to launch some of the projects that we have identified. Now, we have designed policy documents, the most important one of which is the Lake Chad Basin Water Charter. It is a 17-chapter charter encompassing all that we need. It is a critical tool that facilitates coordination and joint efforts on adaptation. It is a binding legal document. However, I should caution that it has not yet come into effect. Out of the 6 member countries, 4 are required to ratify it and submit their instruments of ratification to the government of Chad for it to come into effect. The 4 have ratified, 3 have submitted their instruments of ratification. We're waiting for the 4th before it comes into effect. However, we have already started implementing parts of it thanks to the insistence of the World Bank that prior notification should be given and no objection should be obtained from member countries before certain projects are carried out. So that has now basically made us to implement Chapter 8 of the Water Charter, and we are very happy about that. Among the policy documents that we have produced also to guide adaptation is the transboundary diagnostic analysis of the challenges in the basin. That analysis has identified 4 major challenges, which I will not go through because of time. I have just 5 minutes. Now,
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Let's give Ambassador a round of applause too. Thank you for the very practical description of the work that you're doing in the Commission. We are giving signals on the time, but I do want to go to our last panelist, and hopefully, Irina, you can pull it together for us and share how the water, peace and security approach of the Hague Center can kind of tie all of this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will try to keep it a bit short, but I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the Water, Peace and Security Partnership and to try to explain in a few minutes our proposition of one of the solutions to support the mitigation of water-related security risks and also to turn it into a tool for cooperation. So we are a nexus initiative. That means that we're trying to pull together sort of expertise, resources and knowledge from water management, peace building, development and security, and try to together develop an integrated approach to water-related security challenges. So our approach is integrated, inclusive and informed. So we work both with data-driven analysis as well as participatory approaches in the regions where we are active. And we are inclusive, meaning that we are trying to give a space to all of the relevant stakeholders and groups that should be at the table. So essentially what we have developed, we've developed a toolbox that can help stakeholders in these regions identify and understand the water security risks and also try to act early on. So we have a global early warning tool that through machine learning methodology can forecast conflict 12 months in advance. And by identifying the hotspots where the water-related security risks are the most acute, you can also know where to intervene early on. So there we would implement our participatory approaches, also capacity building dialogues with stakeholders at all the relevant levels. So starting with the national level, but also local and provincial levels and local community leaders, trying to sort of make a level playing field of knowledge and expertise of all of the relevant stakeholders so that they're better able to communicate, negotiate and find solutions that involve all of the relevant partners and not just one group and then there's unintended consequences across the board. So yeah, essentially we work in Mali, Iraq, Ethiopia and Kenya. We work both with the offices of our partners that are in the countries, but we are also able to work remotely, like we do in Iraq, for example, where we are not active ourselves, but we identify stakeholders or actors with a proven track record of long time sort of good work on the ground, and we try to be an add-on to offer them our toolbox and hope that that can improve their work in mitigating some of these water-related security challenges. Thank you.
Excellent, and thank you very much, Irina. Applause for Irina. Thank you. I would like to bring this panel to close with just a few very brief remarks. We all violently agreed on the fact that water insecurity is a fundamental threat to human health, peace, and security. We all need to work together in partnerships to respond first to humanitarian crises related to water. We also need policies, plans, and incentives to reduce water stress and potential for conflict. We also encourage the signing of transboundary water cooperation agreements to increase resilience to water-related risks. And I just want to reiterate that partnerships between IFRC, Water, Peace and Security, partnership UNECE, UNCCD, and its implementing partners is committed to build capacity of government entities, local partners, investors, NGOs, and local communities to assess water-related security risks and to implement risk-reducing measures. We all need to work together, and I'm very grateful for the sharing of experience of our esteemed panelists today, and hope that this is providing a nice setting for the next panel that will follow. Thank you very much all for your attention, and over to Tandy. Thanks to the panelists.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stojkovic, for moderating that really complex conversation there. I think the audience does agree that that was one of a tough conversation to listen to, the complexities that were presented from our speakers, but also I think really good to have highlighted the solutions that member states are taking to address these really complex transboundary issues and some of them in communities as well that we heard about. I think we should give them another round of applause. But at this same juncture, I want to call upon the next panel of speakers to perhaps take the stage. Mr. Cotto Daniel Dagnon, Mr. Rado Gonzalez, and of course, Mr. Dr. Daniel Segai. Joining you here now for our next conversation, which we do hope also to efficiently go through. Thank you so much again to the issues that we've heard discussed in the high-level conversation on just how complex the issues around water management, particularly when it comes to cross-border and transboundary sustainable water management can entail, but also the aspects that we heard from impacts at the community level, from, for example, the Lake Chad Basin, that sort of brought it down to impacts on people, after hearing, of course, as well, from Lebanon and Ukraine, and then also the Netherlands reflecting on some of the sustainable ways that they are addressing issues of water. Let me start this conversation perhaps with you, Daniel, who is the president of the Youth Parliament for Water in Berlin. It's fantastic that we make this conversation intergenerational. I think earlier we heard from Mr. Dimitri speak about the water people and the politicians having a conversation, and I think this is where we bring it down to that intersection of the different fields to speak about the challenges and the opportunities. So, Daniel, if you can perhaps talk to us a little bit about the policy perspective from a youth angle on how you are contributing to this conversation, very briefly, and then we will hopefully have another round of questions that can look at perhaps the solutions. But I would like to hear from you around your perspectives as a young leader in Parliament driving consultations and engagements on water.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, dear panelists. My name is Koto Daniel Dayon. I'm the president of Benin Youth Parliament for Water. I'm really glad to be with all of you. I'm also glad to meet Daniel Segai again today for this discussion. The Benin Youth Parliament for Water is a youth-led organization created since 2015, working in Benin on issues related to water, hygiene, sanitation, and climate change. And for the case of our chapter, because it's a kind of global organization with different chapters in different countries, we work a lot on the application of integrated water resource management. This is the way that we adopt in Benin to manage our water resources. And we work closer with the government and non-governmental bodies to achieve this. And you know, when we talk about the integrated water resource management, one of the key aspects of this principle is to really engage all the stakeholders to the management and also to action related to the safeguarding of water resources. And we work a lot with the government on that. And this starts from the policy document. When we want to implement the integrated water resource management, we need at local level to have some specific document to achieve this. And for the case of Benin, we have what we call the PANGIR, is the, I will say, National Action Plan of implementing the integrated water resource management. And as Youth Parliament for Water, we are all youth from Benin. We are scientists, we are also professionals, we are also students. So we work closer with the main bodies of the government working on the drafting and the elaborating of all these policy documents. And when we are present to activities related to that, we try to really highlight the need and the priorities of vulnerable people, communities in Benin. We really ensure that youth are taken into account on this document, and we also work a lot on how we can include all the people based on rural areas. When we take, for example, the PANGIR in Benin, we want to start the phase 3 of this strategic document from 2023 to 2025. We really want to work more in deep about how to include gender issues on the management of water resources. And we also work to go not only be at the drafting of all these documents, but we also work a lot on how we can really apply this document. And when we take the case of Benin, we have a law on management of water resources, and one of the components of this law is to create local committee of management of water in around all the water resources in Benin. And even 2 months ago with the GZ through the program AGIO, we work on the implementation of one local committee of water. And you know, when you talk about conflict or maybe crisis around water resource, it always starts when we have conflict of interest, when the stakeholders have different interests and we don't try to really work to have these common interests or to take into account the real need in order to manage the water issues. So for the local community that we try to implement, to maybe organize in Benin, we always try to have on these local committees the representation of all the stakeholders. It can be farmers that use the water, it can be breeders, it can be youth also. And even when we take the case of Benin, the most issue that we face around the management of water resource is related to the conflict between agriculture and breeders also, especially when we are on the on rain season, on other season, when we have one water resource, it can be a lake, and around the lake there is a farmer that has his own field, his own crops, and we still have this kind of breeders, nomad breeders in our African country. So sometimes the breeders and farmers have issue around the water. Like the breeders want to take the water to help to give water to all the, I would say, cow, all the cow, I would say, and agriculture also need water to make their crops. So sometimes there is this kind of issue between the two stakeholders, and we work a lot on making some to sensitize also these kind of people on how they can have good practices in terms of using of water and prevent conflict between them. So we also try to go really beyond of only policy document, but also how we can implement concrete action to ensure that we have good management of our water resources, and we also prevent conflict. And one of the key actions of the strategic plan of my organization for the next 3 years is to implement one program that we call a training program on environmental professions for children and young people victims of migration due to flooding and rising sea levels in south of Benin. Because when we want to address the impact of climate change, the most impact I would say that we face in south of Benin is flooding and also the rising of sea level. So we really want to train the youth and children that are affected by this issue and give them the opportunity to learn more about environmental work, for example. So this is what we are doing in Benin with my organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for bringing it home in terms of, I think, the sensitization that your organization is advancing, particularly around engaging children and youth. And really, I think, educating them, carrying them along the journey of understanding what the implications are of not taking action. So thank you for that. May I turn to Lina Dorado, who is with the Colombia Red Cross. And perhaps, Lina, having heard the discussion from Benin, are there any elements you can relate to in terms of the challenges that you see in Colombia, but more so, I think, the solutions that the Colombia Red Cross brings to this conversation on challenges of water, but more so, I think, the solutions?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Colombia is a special country. We denominate Colombia is a multi-risk country because we have many hazards, natural hazards, like floodings, like droughts. Now the El Niño is coming now, and the rainfall decrease and produce droughts, and the access for water is difficult now in different regions. And also we have a conflict, internal conflict arm. International information decide we have 7 conflicts in Colombia, around of Colombia. This is the reason because we denominate Colombia multi-risk country. And on the other hand, we have too many challenges. The first is ensuring the water. Why? Because the conflict areas is impossible to create access to water. The most difficult part is Colombia is considered the number 6 country with more water around the world. But the access is only possible for 50% population. The access is why? This is one challenge. Why you use the water for 100% population? This is the first challenge is ensuring access to water in conflict zones. The second is the risk contamination, and include the children and youths, is the sanity, and very dangerous disease like diarrhea, example. We need to implement clean mechanisms to clean the water. And the other important thing is humanitarian intervention. Like Red Cross, we have experience in conflict areas, but we need to build capacities with community, with children, with youth. But sometimes the conflict is moving every day and moving every week, and we need to try to establish more conditions to support from the humanitarian assistance. And the peace perspective is important to work together, institutions, humanitarians, organizations, political and local community, including these agreements, and this is a challenge. The peace agreement is a more important challenge for the conflict in Colombia.
Lina, thank you. A big hand to Lina. Another complex situation that you describe, I think, in terms of the too much water and sometimes too little water that communities are facing, compounded with, I think, the added amplifier of vulnerability, which is conflict. You've also made reference to the work that you're doing on emergency response, but also trying to tie that to longer-term thinking around stability and peace for communities, so that that access to water can also be made, can be facilitated. So thank you again, Lina, for that, and we wish you and Daniel a lot of strength. It's a lot of hard work, I think, that you're doing on the ground to just make sure that young people are engaged, that you're carrying children along the conversations of a very difficult topic. I've got a young lady sitting there who was listening and telling me, it's very complicated, I don't understand what they're talking about. And so I think that work that you're doing to bring the next generation along, to understand what it takes to actually drive sustainable solutions is very critical. Let me turn to Dr. Segai here from UNCCD. You've heard the conversation from the start, I think, which was very high level, political, very complex, to the discussions that we've heard from Lina and Danielle here, particularly around drought management. And this is part of the big mandate that UNCCD has to support member states in finding sustainable solutions to combating desertification and address impacts of drought. How do you pull all these elements that we've heard this morning together in terms of providing that support to communities that our two youth representatives have spoken about, but also I think at a higher level, transboundary level that we heard about from the Lake Chad, Lebanon, and Ukraine, those issues that they presented. How does UNCCD bring all this together? It's a very complex question, I know, but that's your mandate. Could you just maybe give us a sneak peek into this conversation on how you're leading efforts on sustainable water management from your mandate perspective?
Thank you very much, Tandy, for this kind introduction. And good morning, everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here today and to also give a kind of a broader overview of what the UNCCD is doing. And I'm also inspired by the two interventions. I'm always happy to hear from young people taking the responsibility, ownership, because participation is ownership. If they own the problem, they will also own the solution. So I think this is very, very good intervention. The UNCCD, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, is one of the 3 Rio Conventions together with climate change and biodiversity. And the UNCCD is the only legally binding agreement on sustainable land management and sustainable development on land issues. We are working on desertification, land degradation, and drought. And I think it's very important to first start with the drought as a challenge. Floods, for example, hurricanes and storms, it is challenging because it's not visible. It's a silent killer. Politicians, policymakers cannot just neglect something that you see it in front of your eyes, the floods, for example. So although drought is one of the deadliest, if not the deadliest and the costliest natural disaster, it did not get the political traction it deserves simply because it is a slow onset phenomenon. And it's a very, very big challenge. But I'm here to say that there are some good news because we are talking about water for peace and issues of conflict. But this drought resilience agenda is now gaining a global momentum. At the UNCCD, first parties, about 196 countries plus the European Union came together to announce a global drought initiative to support countries to become proactive to drought management. One of the things that we always see is also that drought is treated as a crisis, which means you just react to drought when it strikes, and it is too late, too little, and you see a lot of lives and livelihoods being caused as the result of this. So we try to do this paradigm shift of treating drought as a crisis, but more as a risk, becoming more proactive to drought management. And 70 countries have now a national drought plans based on this principle of risk reduction. And more than 70 countries, of course, but these 70 countries are within this global framework of the Global Drought Initiative of the UNCCD. Now, countries know these 3 key pillars on drought preparedness. One is on drought monitoring and early warning systems. Almost every country is now aware of preparing for drought. We need some kind of alert, communicating the alert on drought forecast, communicating the risk, and also trying to disseminate the information to the end users of this information. I think this is very important. Countries are also trying to map their vulnerability to drought, like what you see in any different maps of countries across regions. What is my vulnerability? Who is going to be affected and why? Across sectors, economies, and the community. So this is being done by the countries of the 70 countries under the Global Drought Initiative. And we are also trying to support them for the drought risk mitigation measures, where some of them are working on drought-tolerant crops or efficient irrigation mechanisms or soil conservation, and a number of works that you can do to prepare for drought. So this is really a very hopeful situation where we are. And another thing that I would also want to announce is that the governments of Spain and Senegal launched an international drought resilience alliance, 2 countries, but now this was launched actually at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, and we celebrated the first anniversary of this with 35 countries, and more than 25 organizations are now part of this alliance. I think in the interest of this discussion today, an alliance of countries to discuss the issue of drought and water scarcity. And they have now come together that we need each other, whether it is a developing country or a developed country. I think this is the moment where we use drought not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to work together. Because drought that strikes Ethiopia or Kenya strikes also Somalia or Uganda and the neighboring countries. Drought, somebody was saying, knows no political boundaries. So it's an opportunity for the countries together to work together. And this IDRA, we call it IDRA, International Drought Resilience Alliance, has 4 key pillars. One is to raise the political profile of drought at the global level. And now we have had heads of states summit on December 1st, where we published this global drought snapshot for 2023. And also we had a ministerial meeting yesterday at the IDRA level, also at our UNCCD pavilion. And this political traction on drought resilience, treating drought as a global agenda, is now, I think, has taken momentum. The other thing is having to come up with a common framework for action. I think we need to really exchange experiences and knowledge. North-South complemented by South-South. There is a lot to tell from some small-scale solutions out there that can be upscaled, that can be outscaled. I think this is something that we can promote through this IDRA Alliance. And another fourth pillar is the financing. The elephant in the room is financing. Many countries now know their challenges, they know how to implement, but then when it comes to financing, it's also another innovative financing mechanisms to really promote these issues of innovative finance, whether it is insurance or bonds or subsidized insurance and a number of involving even the private sector, so that we make drought resilience investable, because drought resilience is not an expenditure, it is an investment. We had a policy brief that we launched 2 months ago at the World Water Week, where we found out that investing $1 on preparing for drought, whether it is a no-till farming or doing some kind of policy or agricultural practices that prepare for drought, brings it up to $10 in return. So drought resilience, preparing for drought, also makes economic sense. It is not about saving lives and livelihoods only, but I think we need to change the narrative that it is investable, it also makes economic sense. So I think this around areas of cooperation between countries, we need to also I would finish with this conflict between sectors also. I think he was also talking about herders and farmers. And drought is not a sector, it is a connector. We need to really look into, sometimes you just go to a country where there is only some work on drought issues on one ministry. And that's about it. Minister of Health do not know anything, Minister of Finance. But when drought strikes, it becomes a national issue. It's a health issue, it is a life issue, it is an education issue, transportation, tourism, everything is affected. So I think cross-sectoral coordination, stakeholder dialogue among sectors in a country is very important, and not just the usual suspects which deal with water or meteorology, but also all other sectors should also be involved in the issue of water scarcity and drought. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tsegai. That's a fantastic way to actually wrap up, where you bring all the elements that lack of access to water or too much water can actually impact sort of cross-sectorial themes in how countries are managed. So thank you so much for that. A big hand, ladies and gentlemen, for our 3 panelists. We will not go through the second round of questions, as I know people are pressed for time and need to get to other engagements. At this juncture, please allow me to welcome the Netherlands Special Envoy on International Waters, Ms. Maaike van He. I will not try to butcher your name. Maaike, welcome. We often call you Maaike, so let me break protocol and welcome you to the stage. Thank you.
No war is no news. I actually think one of the best pieces of news at this COP28 is all the wars that have been prevented by Transboundary Water Organization, Basin Organization, River Basin Organization, Lake Basin Organization, and I hope in the future more aquifer organizations. What I learned today from the various sessions is that you need to fix the roof when the sun is shining. It's an expression we have in many of our languages, no? On doit réparer le toit quand il y a du soleil. I think the same applies to Transboundary Water Cooperation. You need to have a dialogue, you need to agree on conflict resolution mechanisms, and you need to build trust in times of peace. I've worked on transboundary water cooperation in many beautiful basins. The Nile, the Indus, the Ganga, Brahmaputra, the Gambi. And in all these basins, bureaucrats and politicians of various riparian countries invested a lot of time and energy in establishing relationships when there were no conflicts. No conflicts related to water and no other conflicts on other issues. It's often a bit boring, bureaucratic, intense work that you don't always immediately see the payoff from. In most of these basins that I've worked on, conflicts emerge at some time. Sometimes they were about water, about an upstream riparian building a dam without having asked a downstream riparian, about water allocations, about floods, about droughts. But more often they were about issues that had little to do with water. A border intrusion from one country to the other, a trade dispute, a political disagreement. And suddenly water allocations were raised by one riparian as part of a broader conflict. In all of these basins, and in many basins around the world, we're making investments in time of peace, and these investments that we made are paying off. These investments mean that we have ways to de-escalate conflicts, that the riparians continue to talk. Often it's as simple as having each other mobile numbers so you can send an app. The investments in peacetime meant that conflicts, small conflicts, did not turn into big conflicts and ultimately into war. And it was never perfect, right? The Transboundary Basin Committees never worked exactly as planned. All these pages and pages of procedures and notifications, etc., that we wrote in peacetime never got followed to the letter. But riparians kept talking. They kept looking for solutions together. Once in a while, one party to the agreement would walk away, but they would always come back to the table. Often politicians would stand on big podiums making big political statements about the other countries and what was wrong with them and that they didn't keep to their agreements. But behind the scenes, the bureaucrat and the politician continue to talk. Because we had invested in procedures and because we had invested in trust building in peacetime. So, there's not many donors here, but investing in transboundary cooperation or in your own country, just on your budget, it actually is a really good investment. It's just not very visible in the moment. It is an investment in fixing your roof while the sun is shining. We're here at the climate summit, and we know that climate change is felt through water. Ordinary people feel climate change because their home floods, or because their harvest is half of what it was last year, because the rains were coming too late, or because their cattle dies, or because their hand pump stops giving water, or because the river is suddenly in your backyard. It is going to rain. We know it's going to rain. More erratic. And sometimes the rains will not come. This will put Transboundary Water Corporation under a lot of pressure. It will elevate the risks of water wars. But we've learned a lot about building trust and establishing basin committees and basin organizations in peacetime. So Transboundary Water Corporation is becoming more important. We have to fix the roof because we know it's going to rain. Thank you.
Mike, that's a powerful way to bring us to a close of this conversation. Thank you so much for those really powerful words. I will try not to even summarize, but I absolutely love your emphasis on the value of investing in transboundary cooperation and the analogy that you bring on us fixing the roof when the sun is shining. and that those investments, while we don't see the immediate gains, they do serve us better in moments of crisis. And that climate change is indeed felt through water. And you go on to describe those families that are stressed for food, the farmer that is struggling to have his cows get to pasture, or the family whose house is flooded. I thank you for those powerful closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I want to thank you for your attention to stay with us until this last moment. I know people are really pressed for time, and we've done fantastic on time management, so we can allow you to go and have other engagements. I want you to give yourselves a big round of applause, and to all our panelists as well. Thank you for being here.